The best system for water quality is what nature provides us, the natural water cycle. I have 2 little kids in elementary school, and they're learning about that right now, and they learn about how rain falls and drains into streams and rivers, and that those rivers flow to the ocean, and through climate we have evaporation, and that water is purified through the natural water cycle.
Water cycles round and round, yes it does, yes it does. Water cycles round and round, yes it does, yes it does. It goes up as evaporation, it comes down as condensation, it comes down as precipitation, yes it does.
We are all about 2/3 water. Babies are about 80% water, which is a greater percentage of water than most fish. But we're about 2/3 water. If you live in this area and you drink the water and you consume the beverages and the food, you are not only mostly water, you are mostly Potomac River. You are more Potomac River than you are anything else. You have the Potomac River flowing through your veins and your arteries.
Is the Potomac River water safe to drink? No, it's not safe to drink. That's why there's a water treatment plant. The water treatment plant is designed to take non-potable water and turn it into potable water.
How many of us know where our drinking water comes from, or where our wastewater goes? Despite decades of important work to improve the condition of the Potomac River watershed, the Potomac is in trouble. Beneath the seemingly pristine surface of this majestic river lie hidden dangers that affect us all.
The Potomac River is a great blessing for our nation's capital because we're looking at a river that starts in the mountains to the west and goes all the way into the Chesapeake Bay and features areas of great scenic beauty, of geologic wonder, of tremendous fish and wildlife habitat. It's a place to refresh the spirit. It's a place where I go to relax, to be rejuvenated. And I think it affords these wonderful benefits to each and every person who chooses to walk along its shoreline or to paddle its waters. When I look at rivers, I view them as the veins and arteries of our nation, and we should keep them free-flowing.
The Potomac River is one of the wildest and free rivers in the eastern United States. Over the last 50 to 100 years, there have been a number of proposals to build big dams, sometimes proposed for energy, for hydropower, sometimes for flood control, sometimes for water supply. But fortunately, we have a river that is wild and free, and because of that, we have exceptional natural areas like this, the Potomac River Gorge, just outside of DC. We like to think of this place as a natural monument in the shadow of the national monuments.
In the days when our rivers were catching on fire, when we had scum across the largest of our rivers, green slime, trash, debris in them, to the point where right here in the Potomac, the President of the United States said this river is a national disgrace because it was so bad. In those days, when the states had the ability to stop this from happening and didn't, the United States Congress decided it was time to do something and created one of America's great laws, the Clean Water Act. That was 1972. It's been 40 years since then.
The history of pollution control efforts in the Potomac River, it started in the early 1970s, and at first there was this gross organic pollution, and that's all you could see in the Potomac River. So we dealt with that. Still got problems. There's too much nutrients, and we've been dealing with that. The ecosystem is better, but it's still not completely restored, and we're finding more subtle problems, and that's these emerging contaminants.
Really what most people think of, though, as emerging contaminants are pharmaceuticals, hormone drugs that people are taking now that weren't in existence 10 years ago. So at that point, we didn't know how to monitor for them. We didn't know how to regulate for them. We didn't know how to control for them. So we're constantly out there looking to see what is that next set of contaminants that we should be controlling in water bodies or drinking water sources.
1985 is the date the Clean Water Act gave. 1985, for us putting zero man-made pollution into our waters. In some ways I like to say, I'm just working to get us to 1985. That's my job. Zero pollution. And that might be close to impossible to what we know now, but that we should never stop working towards that.
All right, thank you all so much. Our water doesn't just come from the tap. You know, it had a whole journey to get to the tap. There's a water footprint that each of us has that we need to manage. And
we have too many conveniences of water out of the tap and all. And so we can't value it because we're not used to drinking anything other than clean water out of the tap.
The Nature Conservancy recently did a poll that showed that of people not on well water, 77% of people do not know where their drinking water comes from.
Where do you think the water you drink comes from?
From the store. I think it comes from a water fountain. Asia.
I think my water comes from a Nestle Pure Life bottling plant.
I think it does come from the Potomac River.
Here at Great Falls, we are seeing where Washington, D.C.'s water supply is taken from the river. This is where the water comes from, where President Obama can brew his morning cup of coffee. And it's really critical to the quality of life in our region that we protect the watershed that's responsible for the water that we get here.
Every day, millions of gallons of water are withdrawn from the Potomac River to supply residents of the Washington, D.C. metro area. The Washington Aqueduct is one of the drinking water treatment plants where this water is processed before being pumped to local homes and businesses.
Our job is to make sure that all of the water that's produced here meets all of the standards all of the time, so that when you turn on the tap or you have some use for it, you can be confident that it has met a standard. Whether the Potomac River is running high, whether it's running low, whether there's algae in the river, whether there's a lot of sediment, whether it's cold, whether it's hot.
We take that water which has been treated so that it's clean, coming from the Potomac, and distribute it all over the city. It's a massively complex technical question, so that everyone, anywhere they are in the city, at any time, can turn on a faucet and water is at the ready, it's clean, and it's ready to go 24 hours a day.
In the U.S., public water utilities treat nearly 34 billion gallons of water every day. The Blue Plains wastewater treatment plant is run by DC Water and collects wastewater from over 2 million people in the Washington metro region.
The two single biggest laws that we comply with are the Clean Water Act and the Drinking Water Act. One on the front end, where the drinking water is being distributed to our customers, and then the Clean Water Act mostly on the back end of cleaning it once it's been used before it's discharged into the river. So then someone turns on the spigot, brushes their teeth, the water goes down the sink. Where does it go? It comes back to us in a parallel, intricate system of pipes to deliver the water back after it's been used.
There's physical treatment, there's chemical treatment, there's biological treatment. And if you look at what comes into the treatment plant and then what goes out, it's pretty fascinating. And it all happens within, a very short period of time. It's nature accelerated. This would happen in nature if somebody were to excrete in the woods, and nature would take care of it and break everything down, and what we do here is just accelerate nature.
Because all the water comes from the Potomac, it gets cleaned, used, transported back, cleaned again, and put back to the Potomac. We are often sending water back to the Potomac that is cleaner than the water that's in the Potomac itself. We're very proud of that.
American Rivers has named the Potomac, quote, the most endangered river in the United States. The Potomac faces several pressing issues, and these could be made worse if Congress passes legislation that weakens the Clean Water Act.
It was good to call attention to the Potomac, our nation's river, because while we've made huge progress in cleaning up grotesque pollution from sewage, we have not dealt with these new contaminants or dealt with the big runoff farms. We've not dealt with the urban runoff from parking lots. We've got to come to grips with these new pollutants, and unless we do that, we're going to lose the gains that we are so proud of today, but we can't rest on our laurels. We need to move forward and meet these challenges.
We may not have the worst of anything, but we have a little bit of everything across the board, from acid mine drainage to big agribusiness causing problems. We don't have the worst of any one thing, but we certainly have just about everything in this watershed.
The Environmental Protection Agency keeps a list of over 80,000 chemicals manufactured and used by businesses. New chemicals are added every day, and the impact of many of these is not well understood or researched. It's not known how many of these chemicals are in our rivers or the long-term effects they may have.
What we've been told by the U.S. government in a report that they did, that 2/3 of these emerging contaminants that come into our water intakes, of these new emerging contaminants, go right through, literally right through our water filtration plants and into our drinking water and our beverages and the food we eat and consume and everything else. Because our water suppliers really aren't meant, they just weren't set up to be able to handle all of these kind of problems. And they meet all the environmental, the protection agency's requirements, but not these new emerging contaminants.
While the EPA, scientists, and water utilities are testing for the presence of emerging contaminants in drinking water, currently drinking and wastewater treatment plants are not required to remove them.
A lot of the things that we're seeing now that are affecting fish, as I mentioned, what we call emerging contaminants, chemicals that are in personal care products and pharmaceuticals, are things that are increasing in the environment because of our lifestyle. We use a lot more pharmaceuticals. We use a lot more personal care products that have antimicrobials and fragrances and dyes in.
Scientists have identified a group of chemicals found in many of the everyday products that we use called endocrine disruptors. These are chemicals that may interfere with our body's endocrine system, which is a collection of glands that produce hormones that regulate your body's growth, metabolism, and sexual development and function. These chemicals can produce abnormal effects in humans and wildlife.
About year 2002, we started having fish kills up in the south branch of the Potomac. So in West Virginia asked the USGS, U.S. Geological Survey, to look into this. And the senior fish pathologist, the senior scientist that was sent up there, not only found that there were fish kills, but found that the male fish basically had eggs in their testes, basically had female parts in their testes, which is, well, it's weird, and it's of course wrong for these, especially for this type of fish. Most of these were smallmouth bass. 80 to 100% of some of the male fish had that, the so-called intersex problem. Then down into the Shenandoah, and all the way down here into our local waters around Washington, D.C.
This is a serious, serious issue. It's a profound concern to biologists, anyone who understands what it takes to actually change the physiology of a species.
It's literally due to the chemical soup that the fish swim in. That means the emerging contaminants and the endocrine disruptors in which the fish are swimming is causing this problem.
There is some evidence that they may have an impact on fish. It's not clear yet that they have an impact on humans. They exist at extremely low concentrations. One of the reasons they're an issue now is because it's only within recent years that we've had the analytical capability to even detect them at these low concentrations.
I think a lot of times we as scientists are inspired just by the research. We're people who like mysteries, maybe, and we like to figure out what's going on. But I think in more recently, maybe, I am much more concerned with the environment. As a mother, I'm concerned about what things might be affecting particularly young children, because we know many of these things, the most sensitive time for fish to be affected is when they're young. We use fish as an indicator of the ecosystem health. Because they're in the water all the time. They're being exposed to the sediment, they're being exposed to the water, and they're being exposed to what's ever in their food that is probably also in the water.
Always had tap water, go to a restaurant, drink tap water, and then once I was pregnant, started to wonder if that was even okay, because you hear all of these things about what's better, tap water, bottled water, filtered water, and as I started to have to question and ask myself if everything I was doing was safe enough throughout the pregnancy.
I am not, let's say, paranoid about the water. I might be if I had a young child, you know, in those first few years of growth. I may want to make sure they are getting better filtered water. And it's only because we don't know. We know these chemicals are in the water, in small amounts, granted, but we don't still know all that's happening.
While emerging contaminants are of concern to many researchers, there are also a number of problems affecting the Potomac that can contribute to making pollution worse and more difficult to manage and control.
The sewer pipe that's out in the street that takes sewage from a building is the same pipe that takes rainwater coming off the street. So it goes down into the storm drain. That's flowing into the same pipe. It's called a combined sewer system. The problem with that pipe is that no matter how big it is, in a large rainstorm, so much rainwater can flow into that pipe that the pipe fills and overflow goes directly to the rivers. That's called a combined sewer overflow. That's not good.
We are drinking the water that people put farther upstream back in the sewage. That's happening for sure. So, I mean, this whole concept, we all have to take care of each other and everything flows downstream is a fact, and we just have to do it. In the DC area, we are still putting into our waters, which ends up all in the Potomac, about 3 billion gallons of water and raw sewage every year. That's billion with a B. 3 billion gallons of water with raw sewage going into the Potomac every year. That's startling.
While we have made great improvements, it's just simply not clean enough so that we're confident that the fish caught in the Potomac are safe to eat in this area. So at the moment, until it's consistently meeting water quality standards, there's no swimming. So like for fishing, it's better to be safe than sorry and just protect until we're confident that on a constant basis we've met those standards.
The biggest challenge facing the Potomac is population growth and land use change. Across the watershed, we're expecting hundreds of thousands of more people to move into this region and our population to continue to grow. And everyone needs a place to live and places to buy their groceries and places to work. So as we as a society continue to grow and population increases in this exciting region that we live in, there are going to be more challenges for the river. Those forests, those farm fields that help us with the runoff of stormwater are going to be turned into strip malls and housing developments, and that's not good for the river. We get more stormwater runoff and the introduction of new pollutants. So as our society and our population moves forward into the future, we really need to think about how we grow and how we develop.
What we use on our properties, how we fertilize our lawn, what chemicals we put down. We have to recognize that what we put down on our lawn eventually ends up in the river. Whatever floods down from above Washington, D.C. through the nation's capital and south, it all eventually, through tides, flows into our marshes.
People don't often think about the water quality aspect of climate change, but projections are indicating that we are going to have more dramatic and catastrophic flood events as an element of climate change. And when you have these big floods, you have scouring and runoff of more pollutants and toxins and contaminants into the water. We need to invest in our natural infrastructure, our ability to buffer ourselves from these events, our forests, our floodplains, our wetlands, our grasslands, these natural features that slow down the rush of water after big storms and help improve water quality.
We still don't know all the answers. It's going to take a lot of combined effort and action to understand what we are doing to the Potomac and our nation's rivers and what we should do to help protect them. Without strong scientific evidence, it's difficult to push government, public utilities, businesses, and the public to make effective changes. But should we wait to find out what the harmful effects of emerging contaminants might be?
Everybody has something they can do to protect and improve water quality in the Potomac River.
things that people can do to take personal responsibility for improving water quality in the Potomac River. First of all, people should dispose of prescription drugs properly, not flush them down the toilet. Homeowners should look at their property and see how they can control rainwater runoff, using rain barrows to capture rain that falls on the roof, and using rain gardens and other landscaping to capture that water, prevent its runoff, and direct it into the ground. And also, homeowners should consider whether they can reduce or eliminate the use of fertilizers or pesticides. So what you buy and use, you should take a look at the label, read the ingredients, and consider whether this is something you really want to use and put into the environment. And when you dispose of things, bear in mind that whatever goes on the landscape or whatever goes into your body is going to make it into the Potomac River eventually.
It's very easy to blame big business and wastewater treatment plants and agriculture and all those other things that do certainly contribute. There's no doubt about it. But, you know, I guess my emphasis with kids is that there's a lot of things that we ourselves could do differently. And it certainly changed the way I do and even the products I look for in the grocery store. You know, I definitely now focus on things that say they have no fragrances, they have no dyes, and just the sorts of things that are used around the house. You know, do you have to have the perfect lawn with no weeds?
There's 17 million of us that live in the Bay watershed. And so, you know, and sometimes people think, well, I'm only one of those people. You know, what kind of impact can I have? And it's not going to be huge. You know, whatever you do, car you drive, food you eat, the kind of way you keep your front lawn, picking up after your pets, all that stuff is small. Multiply it by 17 million people, 17 million little things adds up to a big thing.
The river should not be one of the most endangered rivers in America. It should be fishable, drinkable, swimmable. It should be a place that we take our children. It should be a place that we pass along to the next generation. It's a beautiful river. It's still, you know, largely undammed, untouched, wild, scenic, but it still has issues that are impacting us, and it's our responsibility to solve them.
Notion of buying water in a little plastic bottle where it has to be pulled out of the ground somewhere around the world, sometimes all the way on the other side of the planet, put into a plastic bottle made from petroleum products, then shipped all over the place by ships and trains and trucks with all the pollutants, then stocked in shelves, then purchased by someone at extremely high cost, then drank up, then the plastic is discarded and it ends up sitting out in our river that we're trying to clean. We do hundreds of thousands of monitoring between us and the aqueduct which treats the water to make sure it's clean and safe. Well, comparing our drinking water to a bottled water, there's no question economically it's a better outcome. It's pennies on the dollar to use drinking water at the tap than to use bottled water. On safety, we do far more monitoring of the quality of this water than bottled water companies.
I'm an avid kayaker and canoeer and bird watcher, and I come down here a lot kayaking and enjoying the waters, enjoying the refuge in the park. So I feel it's a responsibility to clean up after storms and after trash washes up on shore.
We try to clean it. You know, it's one small way that local citizens can get involved and feel like they've accomplished something. You know, that it's our opportunity to clean up. It's not necessarily, you know, and everybody makes part of the mess. I make part of the mess. If something comes out of my trash can, I'm part of it. So this is my way of giving back.
Small group of people, quality work. We were able to get just almost a dump truck load of trash off the river.
The final part of this is, since our water suppliers really aren't at this time and may never be set to take care of these, the issue becomes the best and safest drinking water comes from healthy rivers and streams. If you want safe drinking water for yourself, if you want it for your children, your grandchildren, you won't get it without working towards healthy rivers and streams.
These are sacred waters. These are spiritual refreshment for the American people. This is our legacy. And to date, America has been #1 in trying to clean up and protect its greatest rivers. We have a long way to go, but we have a proud record of accomplishment showing that citizens do make a difference.
All of this stuff, people have to be educated about it. And in areas like this, if we're talking about advocacy, well, we have to get them educated. We have to make them care. You know, we have to go after the issues that make them care. Once that happens, then we start working towards legislation.
It's our job as citizens of this planet, not because of what we do for a living, but as citizens of this planet to protect water. So I'm asking you all to help me with that. We all live downstream from one another. We all have neighbors. We're all impacting each other. We all need to be part of this solution.
A lot of people who live in the area, they eat the fish they catch on the Potomac River. So we have to give a good care to the Potomac River, and we have to cooperate, everybody, to keep the river nice and clean. We have to work hard to do that.